We up. Hey y'all. I hope that you're having a happy Saturday and you're enjoying your day. I'm washing dishes, so don't mind me. We haven't talked about food in a while. We haven't talked about food. We haven't talked about food availability and food storage in a while. And so it's been on my heart and in my spirit to come on and share some things with you guys. And then as I was driving home from Mississippi this week, I saw some things. And so I wanted to come on and really make sure that my community is aware of the realities of where we are with regard to food availability in our country and food availability around the world, and what we can do to ensure that our families and our communities are not caught out there. So say hey when you come in so I know you're here. I'm not going to be able to type in the comments, but we're here. So you may or may not know that the Lord has been stating for the last 2 years that the world is going to experience a famine. It is a 3-part famine. It is a famine of actual food resources. It is a famine of other types of resources, and then a famine of the hearing of the word of God. And so today, here, I've been talking to you guys about the food part because I grow food. And so it is something that is near and dear to my heart. And so I come, we've had a few chats about the word about famine. We've had a few chats about how to prepare and what to stock up on and things of that nature. But I haven't done an update, as it were, about the state of where things are. And after driving home from Alabama and really seeing what's happening in another part of the country, it got even more urgent. It got even more urgent for me to talk to y'all. So I don't know how well you've been watching the news or keeping up specifically with international news. When it comes to, so let's start there. Let's talk about international news when it comes to food. You might think that what's happening in China and with China's weather doesn't have anything to do with you. You might think that a flood in Europe doesn't have anything to do with your food supply, but you would be dead wrong. We live in a global society and everybody shares everything. Everybody is importing and exporting something somewhere for some reason, generally so somebody can make some money. And so when there's significant weather happening around the world, you need to pay attention, especially if that's a place where food is grown. Because if they having significant weather, guess what they not going to be able to do because of that weather? Grow that food. And guess what does that mean for you? It means that food is not going to be available for you to buy. Or even if the food is available to buy because someone else or some other country can grow it, it's now more expensive because it's less of it on the market. It's simple supply and demand. So you need to pay attention when you hear international reports of significant weather happening in places that grow food. So we know, the situation with the war in Ukraine and them not being able to grow wheat and things of that nature. But China has been dealing with some major flooding. So that's affecting their rice production and their corn production. In addition to that, India, maybe about a month ago now, India banned the export of rice. They banned the export. So they can grow it, but they ain't selling it to nobody but their people. You may or may not have seen when that happened, there was a run on rice in certain communities. Costco's and Sam's Club, those types of places, there was a run on rice because people were trying to stock up because they knew the prices were going to shoot up. Because that's how that affects you. It affects you in that way that if someone else, if India is a major rice grower, if they're not selling their rice, that means that somebody else got to fill in the gap, and they can now charge more for what they've grown because there's less in the market. It's simple supply and demand, right? But that affects you because that means that your price at the grocery store is going to change. And let me be clear, it's not going to change the day that they decide that they're banning it, right? Because there's rice in the system. But as that rice, for instance, starts to diminish, the price will go up. And that affects you. Because when you go to the grocery store, your price is going to be higher for specific types of things. And so when we're looking at international news, we have to pay attention to international weather, because international weather affects food production, which affects food prices. It's not complicated, okay? That's what happens. And again, those are not going to be, you're not going to see or feel that immediately, but in about 6 months, you might notice there's less on the shelf. You might notice that, wow, that bag, yeah. Hey, Lydia, yes, exactly. It's simple supply and demand, like in its simplest form, in its simplest explanation. But you might notice there's not as much availability on the shelf. You don't have as many options to choose from. You know, it used to be 7 kinds of rice. Now it's only 3. Right? I know the particular brand of rice. I buy my rice at Aldi. And I buy jasmine rice. And jasmine rice at Aldi a year ago was $4.95 a bag for a 5-pound bag. That same bag right now is almost $7. And that's what happened before anything happened. That was just inflation. So if whoever is Aldi's supplier has been working through India, they're gonna have to find a new supplier, which means my price going up even more. Okay, so when we're talking about food, when we're talking about food supply and food availability, we have to talk about international happenings. We have to talk about international weather and international weather patterns because they affect your food availability. In addition to the availability from the weather made it so they couldn't grow it, sometimes it's just too expensive to grow, or they could grow it, but because of a drought or because of some really significant rain, they just didn't get as much as they thought they were going to get. Like the harvest wasn't as good. So they thought they were going to get, 20 million bushels, and they got 5 million bushels. So guess what? The price going up. If you can get it at all. I mean, think about, how do I want to say this? As Americans, and I'm pretty sure everybody's probably going to watch this as American. As Americans, we're very removed from our food. Like you go to the grocery store and you buy your food, right? But where did that food come from? Most Americans couldn't tell you. They don't know where their avocados came from. They don't know where their grapes came from. They don't know where their lettuce came from. Like, we're really, really removed. Oh, sorry about that, y'all. We're very removed from our food chain. And so, like, the stuff that has become a basic to you, like, I eat this all the time. I go to the grocery store every week. It's a staple on my grocery list. If that thing might have come from 500 miles away from you. So, that's not something you can get in... I live in Ohio. You can't grow avocados in Ohio. We don't have enough humidity. It's not hot enough. You're not growing good grapefruits. You're not growing good citrus in Ohio. It's not hot enough, right? We don't have the right kind of climate. But I like avocados. I eat avocados very, very regularly. But I understand that my avocados generally come from California or Mexico. So what's going on in California? Because whatever's happening in California is going to affect my avocado price. And you know what's happening in California? Probably not. So let me tell you. So y'all remember back in the winter when California was having all them storms and the atmospheric river, and they was talking about, and it just kept dumping. Snow and rain. Remember, it was snowing in LA. Remember all of that? Well, That water got to go somewhere, but it don't go nowhere fast because just too much of it. And now it's summer, all that snow on the mountaintops has started to melt, and it's going where the water already was. So now there's even more water. What does that mean, Tiffany? It means that fields in California that would grow food are underwater. You can't grow no food there because the fields are underwater. Because that they can't, you can't pump water out. You got to wait for it to just dissipate. You have to wait for it to go into the groundwater and run off and run into the ocean. That snow melt coming down the mountain right into them fields. Those fields didn't get planted this year. So whatever they were growing there, be it tomatoes, avocados, almonds, most of our produce comes from Cali, just in case you ain't know. Those fields did not get planted. That means that food is not going to be available, and what is available is going to go up in price. I need y'all to understand this because it's only going to get worse. These changes in our weather, we're not about to have a climate change argument. Whatever you believe is what you believe. Here's the point we can agree on. The climate has changed. End of story. How it got here, I don't care what you think. And I'm not telling you what I think. But we can agree at the point that the climate has changed. I live in Ohio, where there used to be snow to my knees every winter when I was a child and a teenager. And now, if we get one real good snowfall, a winter, we had a really heavy snow. The climate has changed. Simple as, it's snowing in LA, y'all. The climate has changed. It's just changed. And with those changes, there are pros and there are cons. And one of the biggest ones is the way that it affects our food supply. So I want you all to be aware of these things that are happening because they are going to be changing. They're going to be affecting our food supply in the not so far away future. So there's that. Now let me tell you about what I saw in Alabama. So you may or may not know that I just got back from Mississippi, and I went on a solo road trip. Whoop, whoop, for the solo road trip. If you've never done it, I highly suggest it. It was dope. But I'm driving, but I drove. So I drive from Ohio to Mississippi, and when I went down, I used my car GPS. But my car GPS needed to be updated, so it took me one way. And I ended up driving through a lot of construction. So when I came back, I used my phone GPS to see if I could avoid some of that. And the phone GPS took me a whole different way. I didn't get on the interstate. I got off the interstate right outside of Mobile, Alabama, and drove almost the entire state of Alabama on state routes and back roads. I got back on the interstate right as I was entering Tennessee. So that was the thing. So when I was driving down, I noticed that from the highway, I didn't see any farms, which I thought was unusual because I'm from Ohio, and when you're on the highway, all you see is cornfields. But I didn't see any farms. But it was the kind of highway where, like, it's a 2-lane highway and it's like forest on both sides, so you can't see what's on the other side of the trees because the trees are so dense. So I was like, oh, well, maybe they're over there and I just can't see them. Didn't think nothing of it. So when I come back, these state routes, I'm in Alabama, right? I get to see all the farms now, which made me very happy. Until I realized that I was driving past cornfields and all the corn was brown. So if you've ever seen a corn stalk in a field, it's green. There's lots of leaves, and you may or may not be able to see the corn silk from the road on the corn stalks. Well, I'm driving through Alabama, and the corn stalks are brown. Each individual stalk may have had 2 to 4 green leaves. The rest of the plant was completely brown. And there were fields and fields and fields like this. And I was like, oh, wow, Lord, I'm literally looking at famine. Now, what you have to understand is the majority of the corn that's grown in the United States is not grown for people. It's grown for animal feed. But if all the corn to feed the animals it didn't grow. So let me tell you what these brown corn stalks mean. These brown corn stalks mean that the corn didn't get enough water, and so it's dried out. And so corn is not going to grow on those stalks. It's over. It's basically a total loss for the farmer, and he's not taking anything to market. So that's that. So understanding that most of the corn in the U.S. is grown for animal feed, that means that whatever Alabama adds to the national grain feed output, they not this year, because they don't have anything. It's bad. It was very, very, very bad. I would have stopped to take some pictures, but I wasn't sure that I was in a safe enough place to do that, and so I did not. But it was brown. They were brown. They were brown on brown on brown the entire time I was in Alabama. When I got to Tennessee, it got a little bit better. They were more like half and half. So there was some, I could see corn from the road. I could see the actual corn ears on the stalk, on some of the stalks. So it was some better. Why am I here telling you about dried out corn in Alabama? Because we need to understand that these things are happening. And if you don't leave your neighborhood, like, you wouldn't know, right? If you don't never leave, like, if I live in Ohio, if I don't leave like the northeastern Ohio area consistently, I wouldn't know, right? How would I know? Because that's not going to be on the news. It's not going to be on, probably not going to be on social media. It's not going to be, these are not the stories that people are telling, because they're not warm and fuzzy. They don't make you feel good. They're not going to get you hype. And, you know, it's not necessarily controversial, but it's so impactful for your life. You need to understand that if there's no corn for the feed, to feed the animals, then there are less animals that go to slaughter, which means there's less meat at your grocery store. That's the chain, ladies and gentlemen. I know many of you may have been feeling a pull or a tug to start to really become more plant-based. I'm not saying you're gonna be vegan. I'm just saying, like, you know, really start to diminish how much meat you're eating. It's because it's coming. The prices are gonna be crazy, and it's not necessarily going to be safe. So I wanted to share what I saw. I don't have any special revelation from the Lord regarding what I saw. I was literally driving, like, Lord, I'm looking at famine. I'm looking at it. This is the beginning. Fields and fields of what should be fertile, productive farmland is dead. Everything on it is dead. This is the beginning of famine. Famine is not necessarily like everything fails at once. It is a slow decrease. It can be a slow decrease in the availability of food that you can afford. Because there'll be food. It's food right now. Can you afford it? Have you had to make changes to your diet over the last year due to inflation? Famine is not just a complete lack of resources. It is also that what is available is not available to you because it's too high. And so this has been something the Lord has really talked to me about significantly over the last 2 years. You know, really understanding, really getting into prepping and building a solid pantry, and understanding, paying attention to what's happening, understanding what's happening around the world, and then sharing that information with my community to encourage you to prep, to encourage you to get prepared, to encourage you to pray. You know, because the thing is, the strategy is not the same for everybody. The strategy is going to be different for absolutely everybody. But whatever it is the Lord wants you to do, He knows, and He'll tell you if you ask Him. He gave me specific instructions, but I'm very clear that my instructions ain't for everybody. My instructions are for me, because He has something specific He wants me to do. But if this is the first time you're hearing about this, if this is like news to you, and you got more questions, I'm happy to have an offline conversation with you and help you understand where we are and what's going on. And here's the thing. If you're not a person of faith, that's okay too, because I can give it to you from the economic side. So I can show you famine from a spiritual perspective or from the economic perspective. It doesn't matter, because the Lord has shown it to me both ways. It's coming. Food shortages are coming. Water contamination is coming. Period. Not might, not maybe. It's coming. It's coming before the end of this decade. I was just listening to some research regarding food shortages, and the gentleman was saying that scientists who were saying like we were going to be looking at this in 2050 are going back to the table and revising their estimates to 2030 because there's so many weather anomalies happening at the same time and they're hitting so many different food producing areas. It's going to happen. You need to get prepared. If you don't know how to prepare, if you have questions, again, I'm happy to talk to you. But I wanted to share what I saw because I think it's indicative of where we are and where we're going. Now, as I came further north, I told you, Tennessee, the cornfields in Tennessee, the wheat fields in Tennessee, they looked better. The ones in Ohio look like Ohio cornfields. They look spectacular as always. But the weather is changing. There's a severe weather alert today for my neighborhood for large hail. I've been in my house 7 years. We ain't never had hail. Never had hail. So, however you feel about that, it is changing. And we have to get prepared. We have to pay attention. We have to look up from our day-to-day existence, from our little 1-2, and start to plan for a future that is not going to look like our past. So, that's, story number 1 from my solo dolo road trip to Mississippi. If you have questions, let's chat. But I just wanted to share with you guys what I saw, because I thought it was important for people to know. That's all I got, y'all. I'm gonna finish washing these dishes and probably go play in my garden before the rain comes. So, this is Let Tiff Teach You. I'm Tiff. I love you, and I'll holler at you later.